day, and it got like stuck right here, and I didn't think I could get it out. And I'm like, oh man, I've done that like 3 or 4 times. And you do think, you're like, fuck, this is it. This pick's gonna kill me. Like they're too big to go down, but they get just far enough to where they're really hard to get back up.
Welcome to the Beat Sessions. That is my guest, Mike Lars, talking about choking on picks, which seems like a... I don't know, man. I'm a little surprised how that happens, but no, you said, yeah, you're live on stage and you keep them there for easy access, and
it's a normal occurrence.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a hazard, I should say. It's definitely a hazard that should be observed and avoided.
It seems like something that's like a harmless habit that could lead to disaster.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, welcome into the Beat Sessions, man. It's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
I know our friendship goes back a couple years now because we met chilling at Trident, hung out there a couple of times, but it wasn't really until recently that we kind of like found out the love of music that we had each other. I had no idea that you were an immensely talented guitar player. Yeah, no, so certainly, absolutely. You really dig your band, and it was a lot of fun opening up for you guys when you did that gig in January.
It was a good gig.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. I mean, all things considered, with with the limited capacity, and I mean, you guys sounded great, and it seemed like the audience had a really good time and was enjoling the energy. So
yeah, it was a good vibe.
Yeah, especially at that point, because a lot was still going on. It just felt like a good little bit of normalcy for everybody.
It was like sneaking out for everybody,
right?
Like that party you weren't supposed to go to, but you went anyway.
And those were always the best, man. Those were always the best. Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and, like where your love for music came from, what inspired the guitar, that whole process, and, how'd you end up where you're at with these guys currently?
So, Mike Lars, guitar player, songwriter, currently for Cranberry Suit. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I want to say the song that turned me on to rock and roll was a Rod Stewart song called Hot Legs. And I used to ride with a nursery school teacher that dropped all the older kids off to, elementary school and stuff. And she listened to the local rock station, and that's where this song caught my attention. And I knew instantly that I wanted to make that sound, but I had no idea what was doing it. And I run home and tell my mom, and she laughs because she actually knew who Rod Stewart was at the time. And so she started sharing her music with me more openly. Like it wasn't something that we really talked about before. But when I let her know that like this song had struck me the way it had, she started sharing more and more things with me. And eventually, one day we were at Sears. And they used to sell records for this record company called K-Tel.
Yeah. I've read about that.
And it was, I don't know, probably dating myself, this like 77, 70, 78 Kiss Alive 2's out and on the shelves at Sears. And I see the record cover for the album Kiss Alive 2 and the picture of Gene Simmons and the picture of Ace Frehley. Again, I just had this moment of clarity where I was like, I'm doing that. And I knew I wanted it to be the guitar. So that's kind of how it started.
When did you get your first guitar and what was it?
Oh, God. It was, I was 12 and it was a Hondo 2 Les Paul copy double cutaway. So it was like a very heavy and poorly made copy of a Les Paul Jr. or like Melody Maker.
Yeah.
But it was mine, and
I mean, a pretty cool starter guitar still though. Like
actually, yeah, it was. It wasn't bad, and so we're talking. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what setups were, things like that. Action, string gauge, all the things that none of us learn until later, unless you're fortunate enough to be born into a house of musicians or someone that knows where to get you the proper training. But my mom's like, my kid wants to play rock and roll and he wants an electric guitar. Okay, here you go. And we just kind of took it from there. But yeah, the Hondo 2, and it was very heavy, and the action was like a mile off the neck. and so it was very frustrating to learn on.
And so, I mean, how'd you start off? Did you like memorize songs that you liked, or did you? Because I know, I mean, a lot of people talk about strategies and approaches, and I learned this song and kind of built on that, or
went to, my mom signed me up for lessons, and I think I made it through 2 or 3 of them, and because I wanted to learn how to play Stairway to Heaven and Paranoid and things like that. And the teacher was like, yeah, okay, cool, we'll do that. But we started with notes and numbers and charts, and I was just like, it's not how that song goes.
Yeah.
So I stopped going, and my mom was convinced that I wasn't serious about playing, and the guitar sat for probably a year, and then one summer, I was home watching MTV, and I forget. I think it was a Def Leppard video, and it was probably Photograph, and I saw. I think it was who was it? One of the original guitar players. I want to say Steve Clark. I saw how he was playing a bar chord or a power chord, and I did what he did and struck it, and it worked. And after that, I spent the rest of that summer, every video I could stay home to watch, trying to see what they were doing, and just kind of figuring the fretboard out and mimicking as many sounds as I could. And the next thing you know, and literally within about 6 months, it turned into I was playing bits and pieces of my favorite songs when they'd come up, on MTV. And so from there, I started playing by ear, and that's probably the bulk of how I learned how to do what I do.
How old did you say you were then, roughly?
I'm probably still 13, 14 at that time.
Okay. Right around, when did you start playing with people then? I mean, did it take a little while after that, or I mean, was it?
No, a couple years. I was, it's funny, I just got reacquainted with a guy on Facebook. His name's Ronald Rich, and he was the only other black kid in my neighborhood that also liked rock and roll, and he was a big Motley Crue fan. And he was like, hey man, he's like, you got a guitar, and I'm playing with some guys down the street, and we need another guitar player. So he took me with him, and we played, I think the intro, we played Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden and Live Wire by Motley Crue all night.
That's two pretty sick songs to play all night. I mean, that's.
And it was, that was the very first time I ever played with people and in a band situation. Of course, it was a drummer, no singer, and like 5 other guitar players. But that was the first jam session.
You guys like started the post rock phase, just all of you with your guitars. Just oh man, what was the? So what was the first band that you actually like? The first group of guys that you got together with and like started the creative process with? Or I mean, did you start off in a cover band? Because I know some people do that.
Yeah, it was called The Bridge, and it was me, a kid that lived down the street from me, another guy that I went to school with. He was a singer. He had a PA and a place to rehearse, and then another friend, the next neighborhood over, played bass, and actually, me and that guy, probably the year before that band started, me and this bass player, I used to walk with my little guitar amp and my guitar, through the woods, probably a mile and a half, every Saturday to hang out with this bass player. And we would sit and mess with, we were listening to Maiden, Husker Du.
Super underrated band.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe not underrated, but I just don't hear a lot of people talk about them.
Yeah, no, you don't hear. Yeah, it's very specific circles that they come up in. I think is the best way to put it. It's kind of I think it was everybody from my generation's starter underground rock band. But in like mainstream circles, even guys that are always like, oh, I'm all about music. I listen to everything. They never know about Husker Du.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I have some friends that people that know quite a bit, and I'm not going to pretend that I know that much about the band. I've listened to them over the years, and I'm familiar with a couple of their songs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think they're kind of one of those bands that just, how like about bands and you listen to them and you hear them and they never just end up on your plate. I guess I mean, there's so much music out there to listen to that it's hard to, one of the like the one that comes to mind immediately. And I can't believe it took me so long in my life to listen to Iggy Pop and the Stooges. But, I mean, it wasn't until I was probably close to 30 that I finally made an effort to actually listen to them. And I'm like, oh, man, I've been missing out for 30 years.
I was the same way with them. Like, I knew who Iggy Pop was, but I had never listened, like really sat down and listened to the Stooges. And, you start running down different paths, of influence, and things just get forgotten. And man, it wasn't until probably the same thing. I was probably in my 30s, and was living in California, and a really good friend of mine is a serious audiophile, and he just made me sit down and listen. And once I heard "Seek and Destroy" Danger Little Stranger.
Such a good song.
Once I heard that, it was a wrap. It was an absolute wrap. I was totally into them. And so then I went and started backtracing through all of the influence that Detroit rock bands really had on me without me actually knowing that that's where that sound was coming from, that I was attracted to.
I think honestly, I think Detroit gets overlooked so much, especially I would say in the last 70 years. I mean, Detroit, I would argue it is the hub of popular American music. Before that, you could say New Orleans, maybe Chicago, maybe New York. There's a lot of argument there. But when you think about like the rock and roll scene in contrast with the Motown scene as well, and also how a lot of those artists influence each other, and how I think you get a lot of contemporary music that's based on the dynamic built out of both of those genres thriving in that city.
Absolutely.
Really, I've never had a chance to be there, but I would love to go see a show in Detroit and just visit the city for a little bit.
I think I want to play there. I don't know how or with who or when, but like that's one of those towns that I would love to hang out in, and I would love to play with local guys and really kind of get immersed in what that scene is really all about, what it feels like, what they're doing now. Because it's again, not to skip too far ahead, but one of my biggest influences, especially with Cranberry Suit, is that fusion of old school R&B vocals and hard aggressive rock, like rock and roll rock. And I never understood why more of that didn't take off. There was a lot of it in the 70s. A lot of guys, obviously, were using more of the blues influence. The old school, like Chicago style blues and rock. But I never understood why there wasn't more of an R&B catch to it.
Yeah.
It's just a different swing,
Well, yeah, just from the standpoint of the rhythm section. When it comes to R&B, like I love, just drum, being a bass player. So many drum and bass rhythms, within that genre that I'm like, and things that, like you're right, you can lay heavy guitar riffs over. Why not? You can, like, there's horn sections. It's a great thing about music is, Motown especially, just so many different influences still. A very recognizable sound, but still drawing from a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the, do you remember the first show you played?
Yeah. So, back to the bridge. It was with that band, and we did a couple of Ramones songs. I want to say Rebel Yell was out, so we did Rebel Yell, and I think another song off that record. A Cure song, and probably a Sex Pistols song. Like that was like the beginning of me, looking outside of the radio, all the stuff I was like finding alternative and just through friends and stuff. And it was a battle of the bands, and it was at some high school gymnasium, and it was a big deal. That was probably That's probably one of the bigger shows I played. Like the gymnasium was packed. They pulled the bleachers out. There were people everywhere, and yeah, we came in second place. And I think what got us over was we played "Killing an Arab." By
I was going to ask you, like you said, the Cure. I was like, you guys were playing early Cure, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
And for some reason, like that had a really good reaction. You know, like the crowd really liked that.
It's a dope song.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And that's something I'd actually like to revisit. I just recently watched a concert from '79 of The Cure, and those guys were really rad. You know, like they unfortunately, you know, you go through all the cliques and everybody, you know, has their preferences and what they will listen to and what they won't listen to. And, you know, you're cool if you listen to this, you're not cool if you listen to that. And growing up in Baltimore, the Cure was a little ahead of the curve in terms of being readily accepted in a blue collar,
right,
you know, tough town like that. So they got looked down upon a little bit. But as I look back on them, especially watching that concert footage from '79, man, they were awesome.
Oh,
Absolutely awesome.
I love what came out of that, just like post-punk genre, just as far as I mean, still some of it punk too. I mean, a lot of people call the Clash a punk band, but I mean, London Calling's arguably my favorite album of all time, and I listened to it, and I listened to the way Strummer and the band incorporated all these different influences, you know, and still made a punk rock album, but it's, you know, they built it in a way that, you know, the genre, I don't think people thought much of the genre until that album dropped, and, you know, people saw that, you know, what you could do within that framework, you know, writing songs of that nature.
Yeah.
But yeah, I Jump in Someone Else's Train. That's probably my favorite, like, early Cure song. That's
oh, okay, yeah.
I love that bass line, like the dun 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 dun. It's
and that was the trick to them. It's actually that whole scene, like even the Clash. It's like bass was always really vibrant in music back then, and it started to get, the more mainstream you got, especially with rock, like the less influence the bass seemed to have on songs anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, but yeah, one of the things that I liked about all that stuff, man, I was listening to Lords of the New Church, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, man, it's a ways back now. Early Police.
Good stuff there.
Just all sorts of stuff. I got really I got really into the whole ska scene, the whole early roots rock, reggae.
Oh, like the specials, stuff like that?
Yeah. Selector, General Public, you know, all of that stuff. Madness. That whole British sound, you know, from A to B. You know, at one point I was listening to everything from GBH to Morrissey.
Yeah.
You know? It was just a lot of good stuff coming out back then, and from over there especially.
So leading into Cranberry Suit, any other projects that you were involved with that you want to talk about, like stuff that you're, you know, particularly proud of, I guess, or, you know, I assume that there's probably still songs in your catalog that you pull from.
So it really all starts with the first real band where I'm writing music. It's back in Baltimore, and we started out, we were Black Death when we started. And then I think because, I think there was another band called Black Death, and then everything was something Death, Septic Death, you know, Death Angel, you know, just Death. So then we changed the name to White Noise. And I think, I forget who, the guitar player at the time, I was playing bass in this band. It was definitely a thrash metal band. But I wrote my first song for those guys, and they liked it, and we played it, and we opened up for a band called Fang out of San Francisco. They were an old school punk band, and another band out of LA called Verbal Abuse, in just the most dangerous, because of the neighborhood, place ever. and the actual structure of the building. It was an abandoned ice warehouse that was condemned, and nobody should have been up there. Like, you get 100 people upstairs, and you could literally feel the floor sag.
Oh, man.
And if it fell, everybody was going to crash 30 foot to their death. But that's where it really started, and that turned into my first band, which was called Gut Instinct, and that's where I really started writing and kind of chipping away at my own, my own style, my own approach to things. It was very hardcore punk, metal crossover, very message driven, and then as all young bands, that one fell apart, and that ended in 91, and then I moved out to Arizona and did another more of the same hardcore metal bands. Had a band called Madness, Action, and Cause, and that played around Arizona, Phoenix, Seattle, a little bit of San Diego, and I don't think we ever played LA, but just regional stuff like that. And when that one came to an end, I think that band lasted 8 years in all, and did a lot of really cool stuff, learned a lot. But when that came to an end, that was the first time that I was really struck with, I want to get back into my influences. Like, I'm more interested in the rock and roll that I grew up with. And that's the precursor to Cranberry Suit, because that's when I started looking for something that could sound like Cranberry Suit does.
Do you want to kind of like familiarize the audience with the band, describe your guys' style and how you kind of came together?
How we came together is easier than the style. Basically, I was so had a couple of really good projects here over the last 10 or 12 years or so, but like we just couldn't. I'd get a band together, and it would we'd come up with a set of music, and everybody was digging it. It was great. We'd play one or two good shows, and honestly, the drugs just kept fucking everything up.
Oh, man, that's
there was just always somebody with their nose in the bag, or somebody in a bottle, and it was either the drummer or the singer, and so I'm in this real like just desperation mode to find a band. So I decide I'm going to stop looking in Tucson because I only want to do originals, and I really just want to play rock and roll. Like, I don't want to do death metal. I don't want to do metal at all anymore. And I don't want to do, the scenester, punk, grunge rock thing. Not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but it's not what I'm looking to do, and that's all that's going on down here at the time. So I find an ad on Craigslist, and I don't even remember what it said, but I contacted these guys. They were looking for a guitar player, and I'm thinking, all right, this will be cool. I can just, be rhythm guitar, hang out, do what I'm told, and just play some music.
Yeah.
So
most people aren't that optimistic about Craigslist ads. They're usually a little more sketchy than that.
And I'm completely nervous because I've met every weirdo that Craigslist has to offer trying to track down musicians. There's definitely a book that needs to be written
right.
about those experiences. But these guys actually email me 3 or 4 songs, and they're good. And the vocalist is what is standing out to me.
Your guys' singer is good. What's his name?
Brad Thomas.
Yeah, he's good, cool dude. Great singer.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that the beauty to Cranberry Suit is he just naturally has the ability to do what he's doing, and without having to talk about it a whole lot, we just know what each other are looking for. So it's the best writer's position that I've ever been in, because now I can just really concentrate on the music aspect of it, and he handles the lyrics, and it's just I know what he's going to do when I come up with a certain riff,
Yep.
and it's easy.
Was that chemistry just like immediate? I mean, did you feel that like pretty much instantly with hanging out with the guys, or did it take some time to develop?
No, it was immediate. That's just the way it is, And it's one of those things. I've been in enough bands where I know, without being able to, afford the guy that I would pick. If one day I was just like, I need a vocalist for a record, and I think, yeah, we're gonna go with. I'm gonna call Axel for this,
Right.
because that's gonna be exactly what I need. Without being able to do that, um, it gets really tough because everybody says, yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm totally down. Let's do it. And then you start playing, and you're miles apart. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how it gets lost in translation, but with Brad, from the moment I heard him, I saw the potential for what could happen. And so what's funny is, so I'm supposed to be rhythm guitar. It's an acoustic deal that they're doing. Kind of had a Stephen Stills Traffic kind of vibe to it.
Cool.
And obviously there's another guitar player, and so I commit to learning the 4 or 5 songs and going up to audition. And the day before I'm supposed to go up, Brad calls and he's like, "So, how do you feel about being the only guitar player?" And I'm like, "Okay, what happened?" He was like, "Well, Jerry quit last night, and we still want to audition you." I'm like, "All right, yeah, fuck it, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
Let's do it." So spent that night. I knew I wanted to transpose that stuff from acoustic to electric. So I picked the 3 songs that were the easiest to do that with. We went up and jammed, and it just worked.
That's awesome.
It just worked. There's been minor adjustments. We got a new bass player about a month and a half into it. But yeah, other than that, it just worked. It just worked. And especially, like, we spent the first month working on the music that they had sent me originally because they had committed to a show. And none of us thought there was any point in canceling the show.
Yeah.
And I figured that was like a good trial by fire to see if these guys could pull it together to get something done. So we focused on the music that they had originally. I think we did 6 of their songs, and I wrote 4 or 5 more to get us through that set. Once that was done, then I don't know. It's like the tap opened up, and I just started writing, and everything that I was sending to him, he was just coming up with killer hooks and licks too.
That new bass player, is that a different guy than, because you guys had a new bass player when you played in January when we did that gig, right?
That's the guy.
Oh, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's the second bass player.
Okay.
And the only bass player for Cranberry Suit.
He's sick. He's a really talented cat. What's his name again?
Darwin Scott.
Darwin Scott. That's right.
Yeah. He's he's a serious player. Serious player.
He's just got good style too. Like I like you notice the way that certain musicians handle themselves on stage, and he's but like all of you guys. I mean, you were really entertaining to watch. Like,
thank you.
You shred and you got your style, and it's I mean, I'd never seen you guys. I mean, listened to you on Spotify, and it was really a pleasure checking you guys out live for the first time.
Right on.
So what's the how's the live show looking for you guys? I mean, how have you done anything since we did that gig in January, or what are future plans for you guys as far as approaching 2021?
So we played a fundraiser for Smiling Dog Rescue, just about maybe a month ago, and it was great. We opened up for this other local band. If I had to guess, throughout the day, over 1,000 people came to the bar through the fundraiser. And there's probably 350 people on the patio. It was an outdoor show. Only because that's, where they keep their stage are you familiar with the Territorial? Down on I forget.
I'm not, unfortunately, no.
Screw this up. It's not. Is it Ajo? Yeah. All right, on Palo Verde. And it's a cool little. It's not really a biker bar, but it's a bar that's on every poker run. Like that is a stop.
All right.
Every poker run in town.
Gotcha.
You know? Yeah, those guys over the years have always supported local music, you know, and it's got a good vibe to it. And yeah, it was an amazing crowd, you know, and the band was well received. We've got another show coming up at Chopper John's in Phoenix. We're going to play May 30th, so Memorial Day weekend. That's Sunday. And then there's another one in Tucson, back at the Territorial in June on the 26th.
And you guys, I'm really curious about the creative process because some of your bandmates live in Phoenix, correct? And some of you guys are down here?
Everybody but me is in Phoenix.
Okay.
I'm based out of Tucson.
What's the creative process like for you guys? I mean, it seems like from your initial greeting with them, you know, things felt pretty organic. I mean, you guys sending stuff back and forth? Do you go up there to jam with them, or?
I go up once a week. You know, we work on it. We just woodshed the set. During the week, when I can, I write and record and send demos. And basically, I'll send everybody the demo. If I get the thumbs up, then Brad will start working on lyrics, and we meet up and just get it done. And it's another arrow in the quiver, so to speak.
So you released an EP last year, correct?
Yes.
Autumn's coming on. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Any plans as far? I mean, are you guys in the studio right now putting together new stuff? I mean, do you anticipate something new, or are you
planning to go in the studio? We're working with a new drummer right now, and we've got 4 new tunes that we're doing with him. And as soon as those are up to speed, we're going to record those. And I don't know if we're just going to drop them as singles or release another EP. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do with that, because there's actually a lot on the table. We're talking to a management company and a producer that are pretty serious about us. You know, and they want us to wait until they pull the trigger. So we're not spending, you know, money after money and, you know, redoing things.
Yeah.
But yeah, just working on new music, looking for some relief with the restrictions and where we can play versus where we can't play, and things like that. Because actually, so the show in Tucson in June may or may not happen. You know,
still up in the air?
Well, yeah, the local stuff in town is weird. You know, the
Yeah.
state's open, but the town's not. So, or doesn't want to be. You know,
I mean, possibility of maybe just like changing the venue on that gig. I mean, have you guys considered that, or?
We're not throwing it. It's
Gotcha.
There's a local MC in town that is trying to do a fundraiser for a children's benefit, and it's really up to them. You know, they invited us to play, and as long as they, you know, say it's a go, then we're down.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really interesting point just now as far as the way you guys are releasing music, because, you know, I listen to you guys and I listen to your sound, and I mean, I hope at some point you guys conceive of and put together an album, because I think your sound definitely caters to that for sure. You know, I don't want to say classic rock vibe, because I don't think that that's necessarily, you know, hitting the nail on the head, but I think you guys could definitely thrive within that, you know, creative element. But I mean, I completely get releasing songs on their own, especially with the way that people listen to music. You know, the majority of people are streaming their music, and you know, I was reading like vinyl sales are still up from last year, so it's cool because I mean, people are gaining exposure to music and still spending that money and appreciating it. So, you know, as a guy that nerds out on that myself, I definitely dig that. But it's. I mean, like, have you guys thought about the album writing process with any type of songs, or I mean, is it just?
Oh yeah.
Like, just you start with one and just you keep working from one to the next.
This is actually so there are a couple of tracks from the first EP that will make an album. We actually recorded a second EP. We just haven't released it yet.
Okay.
And
Can we anticipate hearing that soon?
yeah, there will be 2 tracks from that coming out very soon.
Right on.
This by summer, like, yeah, literally.
Next couple months.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah, those are coming out. Those we just finished up. We just finished the last touches on those 2 songs a couple of weeks ago. So we're just working on other stuff, But that will those will come out soon. And ultimately, what we want to do is we'll release everything digital, but I want to do a limited run of vinyl. Like I really want to do the full deal. Fold out, good art, good liner notes, good information.
All about it. Be
Yeah.
amazing. I was actually I was chatting with Finney up at Finney's Landing earlier, and he was telling me I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but he was chatting to me about it. He's putting together I think it's a 3 vinyl package that it basically is like a retrospective of the Tucson music scene from like the early 70s up to like 92. And so all these different bands that, he's dug pretty deep. He's found some old artwork. He's doing some interviews, like, getting pieces written by former members of bands.
Nice.
And I think they're going to be able to have that package together by Christmas time. But yeah, he was telling me like they're in the. I think he said it takes like 5 months for them to press the vinyl, and in the process of doing that, you also do the sleeve development. I think it depends on which company you're working with, but
wow.
The company that they chose to work with, they're that's the major part of the process, obviously. So you bang that out and then fine tune it. But yeah, no, he was telling me about this just a cool booklet that he was going to include with artwork and stories and stuff. And I mean, I think that would be amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird when you think about how long it's been, since we went from vinyl to compact disc to MP3 players to now almost exclusively Apple Music, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I miss, like we were talking earlier, I miss being able to put headphones on, burn one down, throw a record on, and just, get lost, in the band's full concept. Because I think you understand bands better when you look at that full range of artwork, and expression. I always felt like the bands that I held on to as my favorites, part of that connection and attraction to them was I understood who they were based on studying that album. All the documentary style photos. When they used to print the lyrics on the jacket for the record. Inside. And once upon a time, man. My head was just full of lyrics. And tunes because I just sit around as a kid, not doing homework and listening to records.
Do you think you ever see yourself getting the itch to maybe kind of like do your own little side project, something in a different genre?
Yeah,
it has to have crossed your mind.
Oh yeah. Because I'm really so like you asked about like what the style of Cranberry Suit is, and I'm really trying to realize that like I think Al Green should have played in front of or should have sang in front of Guns N' Roses. Like that would be the shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that fusion of his soulful lyrics, and angst even in his vocal patterns, and just all out raw kick-ass rock and roll band. Like that's my vision, or that's the type of sound that that I'm pursuing in Cranberry Suit, and everybody else seems to they don't think I'm too crazy. They seem to be all right with it, and it really seems like I feel like we're touching on that, especially with some of the newer stuff. One of the songs that's coming out that you'll hear, it's called "It's What You Are," and that really gets us close to that vibe. It's got absolute mellow groove through the verse, and then the chorus kicks in and is just, in your face and rocking, without losing any of the melody or soul in it. But I'm an old school punk rocker, and
me too.
Desperately want to do another, 3-piece, just blast it out.
Descendants style, so Black Flag kind of.
Exactly.
We like to bring it up on the show when I have a guest. What are you what are you listening to right now? And to also ask, like, how much do what you listen to at the time is influencing the songwriting process?
Consciously, I don't know. That's a tough.
That's
one.
A great answer.
Because I listen to everything. I'll go from reggae to hip hop to outlaw country, to speed metal, at any point in any given day, I'm listening to whatever I remember, to queue up. People tell me, I keep hearing Zeppelin. Like, everybody says we remind them of Zeppelin, and I'm definitely a Zeppelin fan. And I take that as the just highest compliment ever, because I love the arrangements that Page and Plant came up with. That whole band, I mean, for me, they are one of the absolute magical bands of rock and roll. The fact that they were able to go from, well, when you look at the music that they wrote from Zeppelin 1 to Coda, as an example, just the range of styles that they played and approaches that they implemented, they were limitless.
Yeah.
in their approach, and in that way, I think I'm influenced by them directly. Yeah. Like, I don't, no matter what project I'm in, I don't think we have to adhere to a defining, way to play, the music that we play. I'm way too OCD to even do that. You know what I mean? But I appreciate a band that you can that can show you a lot of different faces. Like, currently, there's a band called the Temperance Movement that I've been listening to a lot lately, and like Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown.
All
right. I rediscovered Glenn Hughes, so like everything that he's been in, I don't know. Him and Bonamassa did Black Country Communion, with Jason Bonham, and then he had this other band called California Breed. I have no idea who the players were in that, but that's just raw rock and roll. Like, you're almost surprised that he went as stripped down as he did, because Black Country Communion is a huge production.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and does this other thing, California Breed, that's just 4 guys in a rock band banging it out, and now he's singing for another project called the Dead Daisies.
All right.
And I think he replaced John Corabi on vocals, and he's also playing bass. And their new stuff is just, it's killer. It's killer. A lot of Sturgill Simpson lately.
He's so good.
Yeah, Sturgill's the man.
I mean, and I love that he wins that Grammy for Best Country Record, and then he drips. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the record that followed after that, but it's like, it's not country at all. It rocks. It's cool. But it's
the one that they did the anime for. I forget the name, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh man, I almost gotta. Oh, I feel like I should look that up, but I don't know. You said Bonamassa too. Have you heard the new Alice Cooper record?
No.
So he got Bonamassa to do. So obviously he brought in like all these Detroit musicians to work on the record, and there's a lot of cool guest appearances, and you should definitely check it out. It's a good record. But he brought in Bonamassa, and they did a cover of Rock and Roll by the Velvet Underground.
Ooh.
And like picked it up a little bit, gave it a little more energy. Cooper even talks about it. He's like, the cool thing about the Velvet Underground in that song is like, it has this kind of like laid back. They call it like heroin chic is the term that they use. That's kind of like carefree, like whatever attitude. And they picked it up a little bit and gave it a little attitude, and it's a cool cover. It opens up the album, so it's a cool way to just jump right into that. But I mean, we were talking earlier. We were talking about Detroit, and I mean, there's got a little bit of Motown on that album. I mean, Cooper's he's touching all the bases on it. It's a fun listen.
He's another huge influence for me as well, from a very young age. Like I've been listening to Alice Cooper for a long time. And he's another one, man. I've over the years I've listened to him do and be whatever he wanted to do musically, and it always works. It just always works.
I remember when I was in this is like 12 years ago, in my 20s, and I was a sponsored runner, and so I was running a ton, in Arizona guy, and I just remember running on U of A campus one morning and like running by Alice Cooper.
Yeah,
he's doing like a morning jog, and I was like, "No way! Like, no way!" And I didn't stop him or say anything, but I was just like, "That's arguably the coolest thing that's going to happen to me while I ever go running anywhere." I mean, but yeah, love that he's an Arizona guy, and
he's out, man. I've never everybody has Alice Cooper sightings, but me. I've never run into him or seen him anywhere. But I went to a charity event that he does annually up in Phoenix. I think it's called A Night in the Round. And everybody in Arizona is going to hate me for not remembering the name of this theater, but it's a round stage in the middle of the room, and it spins so you can see everybody from every angle.
Oh man, I'm drawing a blank on it too, but I've seen a couple shows there too. Yeah. I saw Granddaddy and Pete Yorn there, I think.
Oh. But yeah, this Christmas charity that he does is huge. It gets a ton of support, and you can tell how many people locally just know him because he's that accessible.
Cool. It's just cool to have someone like that in the community, like someone that's obviously very influential, but still grounded and approachable. And I always appreciate that about art, especially because I just feel like we're in a day and age with social media where we just hype people up, and I feel like there's just this weird mindset of people. They have so much access because of social media, and you get these people that are like, I feel like I know this person, and then they do something wrong, and it's like, oh, how could they? And it's like, you don't even know them. Like it's just music, they're people too. They're gonna fuck up. Some people screw up more than others, some people, whatever.
People forget that there are no filters in life, and you don't get to edit it and redo it before you put it out there. And so yeah, it's these are trippy times, man. It's trippy times. Social media is just how it's changed the human to human dynamic is pretty interesting.
And it's just so frustrating too because it is, as a musician, it's an incredibly useful tool.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, it's a curse and a blessing. A lot of people. I've got an older brother that has been a professional musician, my whole life, and he's old school. He's a touring musician, recording artist. Now he just does engineering stuff and teaches. But he's really down on the whole streaming thing. And I get it because it's completely changed the game from where if you were good and you put a record out, you sold a bunch of records, you made a bunch of money.
Yep.
Where now there almost isn't a record industry anymore. Not like it used to be. So everybody's gone to streaming, which I think is great because now without having to have a record deal, all I have to do is put good music out and I've got access to the whole world. Cream rises to the top.
Yep.
But the funny thing about Cranberry Suit is we got together and literally COVID hit 3 weeks later.
Oh man.
Right when we were at the point where we're like, fuck yeah, we're doing this. This is real. It's going to happen. COVID hit. And so we've been struggling with that. And that's kind of why the hold off on releasing too much material without the ability to really go back it up and support it.
You guys are absolutely one of those bands. The energy of your music, you saw a lot of bands do it last year. A lot of bands put off albums to, what's the point of doing that?
Because if you can't support it, regardless to how good it is, because I'm guilty of this too, especially when I find new stuff, I want to see it.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to be there. You know, I want to breathe it, feel it. You know, listen to it, dig it. And so it's you know, you kind of blow your wad when you release something without the ability, you know, to also show it. So it's kind of, you know, what do you do?
Yeah.
Because we're starting to not get a backlog, but the songs are adding up. You know, it seems like it all went by really fast. It's hard to believe that it's been a year, but in that amount of time, you know, we're up to a 2-hour set. We have a 2-hour set that we
we're
can
talking
play now.
14, 15 songs probably that you can, at the very least.
Yeah.
I mean, you brought up Zeppelin too. You guys opened up that set that we played together. You guys opened up with the Zeppelin cover. I can't remember what song it was. It was
Houses of the Holy.
Yeah, that's right. You did Houses of the Holy. Great cover. I mean, excellent cover, by the way.
Thank you. That's fun. That's a fun song. And not one, like, it's not the Zeppelin song you hear all the time, you know, when people do one. Everybody's got their go-to.
Right.
You know, and I think that one was kind of out of thin air.
That's well put. They have a lot of songs in their catalog that, you know, you're talking about just regular rock radio get completely overlooked and don't end up in circulation. And it's, I mean, I think every band pretty much has that grievance. It's unfortunate too. I mean, I think radio is great, obviously, for the exposure, but you know, you talk about streaming services and the internet, things like Pandora and Spotify. You know, you get on some of their radio channels, and now you're listening to, like, now stuff is coming up that, like, I haven't heard, and that's, I mean, that should be part of the radio listening process.
Yeah.
It's what.
And I remember when it was. I mean, like, you know, as a little kid, you know, I remember calling in the first time I heard Dream Police by Cheap Trick, and the DJ started hanging up on me because I was requesting it. Like, he'd spin it, the next song would play, I'd call again, you know. And they're like, fuck off, kid, you know.
That's hilarious.
But,
you know they got a new record coming out next week.
No.
I think it's next week or the week after. Yeah, Cheap Trick's got some.
Oh, man.
They got a new record coming out. I think it's like their 20th record or something like that.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. Those guys are just amazing.
They're rad. I love them.
Yeah, another big influence. But yeah, you know, I remember like the MTV days. I remember in an afternoon of watching videos on MTV, you could see Iron Maiden, Madonna, Van Halen, Black Sabbath, the Dio years, you know, Culture Club, Madness, and Judas Priest. You know, like, that was a segment on MTV once upon a time. And then all these new prog bands out of Europe, you know, that you had never heard of before. And now I can't remember the last time I've even really listened to terrestrial radio for anything other than the news, because it's just, you know, I mean, you know, I love all the old classics, but come on,
Yeah.
you know, there's a ton of great new bands, you know, out there, and it's weird. It's just stagnant in that way, you know.
So we're talking about the ability that musicians have. The counterpoint there is that, I mean, you and I could probably, I mean, we could make an album on my laptop right now if we wanted to with software. You know, like, we wouldn't even need guitars.
Yeah.
You know, what's your approach as far as sorting through the riffraff and kind of dealing with all that? Because, I mean, I have a lot of people that say that it's like, man, it's overwhelming just trying to find new stuff. And it's why I started this channel. It's why the people that have subscribed are feeling it and are into it. Yeah. You know, it's you know, just a community where, I mean, I'm looking at stuff and reading about bands that people are mentioning that I would have never otherwise even heard of. You know, and it's really cool in the process to, you know, not all of them are great. I don't like all of them, but
right, yeah, yeah.
You know, like, what's your approach? How are you?
I still keep it kind of like the, you know, like when I was a kid, you'd always read the back of the album to see what bands that band thanked. You know what I mean? There was always a thank you list.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you know, all bands that they were thanking, but, like, you know, if for example, you know, like, if somebody toured with Kiss, or Kiss toured with somebody on their next record, they mentioned them, you know, in the liner notes. I kind of do the same thing, because, like, with Spotify, you can get into the artist profile, and sometimes they get into it and tell you who their influences were. And sometimes it's a great new band that you've never heard of, and sometimes it's some really old school, obscure shit that you missed, you know, that you get to go back to. And so I'll just plug it in and look for the radio station for that artist, you know, and I'll give it a day of driving around, you know, thumb up everything that I like, you know, and then just, you know, repeat, kind of rinse, wash, repeat. It is tough though. It's a process, and you find yourself kind of getting stagnant because, of course, now we're spoiled because it's all instantly available.
Like everything else, pretty much.
Yeah,
It's,
you know, and then you use it all up and burn out, and you're just like, fuck, I want to hear some new music, you know, and so it you know, it gets kind of crazy. But I think I also listen to a wide enough spectrum of music to where my playlist suggestions on my streaming services are just all over the place. So there's always something cool.
Makes for great listening, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned liner notes. It makes for a good segue here. Got this. Oh no, it's not showing up here. Come on. There we go. Got this cool article. The famous artists behind history's greatest album covers ever. What are some of your favorite album covers, like off the top of your head that you can think of?
Hands down, all of the Frank Frazetta stuff on Molly Hatchet album covers. Hands down.
Right on. This article, throughout the 20th century, record sleeves regularly served as canvases for some of the world's most famous artists. From Andy Warhol's Electric Yellow Banana on the cover of Velvet Underground and Nico's 1967 debut album to the custom sprayed Banksy street art that fronts Blur's 2013 Think Tank. That's a pretty cool record cover. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a cool one. Art has long been used to round out the listening experience. So this new book, Art Sleeves, explores some of the most influential and groundbreaking, controversial covers from the past 40 years. This is not a history of album art type book, said the book's author, DJ, and arts writer D.B. Berkman over the email. Instead, he says the book is a love letter to visual art and music culture. But they got the Andy Warhol cover there. They talk about the cover of Sticky Fingers, which actually Andy Warhol did himself, and the unknown crotch on that album still remains unknown. But one of the they talk about Joy Division and New Order in here, and the cover of Unknown Pleasures with the radio waves emitted by a rotating star, and then the cover of Power, Corruption, and Lies. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
So that's a painting from Henri Fantin-Latour, but it's this cool. I think I could probably turn my computer a little ways just so you can see it. But it's just like this cool. Probably familiar with the image.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, cool little book. I would say if any of you are interested in the art, I mean, obviously this is a show that focuses on vinyl. It's a big part of this. So yeah, I mean, some of these album covers are exceptional, and then from a standpoint as a collector, make for really just great pieces of art. I mean, really is what it amounts to.
That it was. It's like a total package. Because you get audio and visual. And like I was saying, it helps you better connect to the band, because a lot of times the right image will explain what you're listening to.
Yeah.
Especially if you're listening to some just crazy music. You know what I mean? But if you can develop a perception of what's going on based on the visual.
Yeah.
I think it was either Black Flag or Fear were some of the first punk vinyl that I bought. And it was Black Flag because it was a record called Family Man, and it was a hand puppet with a knife, and the hand puppet looked like a serial killer, like Punch and Judy style stuff. And but I just knew that I was vibing with the record because of the artwork, and I had no idea who Black Flag was at the time. And grabbed it just because of the cover work, and then mind blown after.
I've definitely done that before
track.
too. Just grabbed a record because I thought it was cool, and
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of a band, but I know I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
This article goes on. This is really funny too. So I'm going to be 37 on Tuesday, so I'll age myself a little bit. I was not familiar with Skipper, Barbie's little sister. So this is funny. So in 1992, dissenting graphic designer Barbara Kruger created the artwork for the only LP ever released by short-lived Girl Riot band Growing Up Skipper. So the group took their name from a controversial Barbie released in 1974, a version of Skipper, Barbie's younger sister. This is crazy. When you twisted her arm, she grew breast and grew taller.
Wow.
I had no idea about this Barbie.
Yeah.
This shit's crazy.
How did we miss that?
I mean, I think they probably, the SJWs at the time probably shut that shit down real quick. I mean, I'm right there with, like, it's kind of inappropriate for a little kid to be playing with something like that, in my opinion. But anyway, so they dismantled the Barbie, and because the band was growing up Skipper, there's like this dismantled Skipper doll on the cover that has served as some funny artwork. But I just thought that story was hilarious.
And so now I'm going to look into growing up Skipper.
Right? It's like it's like right up there with like the Beatles Dead Babies cover or whatever.
I don't remember that.
Are you familiar with that?
Uh-uh.
I can't remember. I think it's I want to say it's Let It Be.
Okay.
That there's an original cover with just like Dead Babies on it. It's like the Dead Baby album, and obviously they shelved the cover because of that. It's back when that was released. Even now, I don't think that would go over well.
Because it was the 1960s and people actually gave a fuck.
Right. But while we're on the topic here, I got some of my favorite record covers. We were talking about Stooges, Funhouse. That album cover that's a good one right there. Really like that one.
And dope record.
And a dope record, absolutely. Got obviously, one of my favorites, Paul Simonon, forever immortalized, smashing that bass. Great bass player, one of my favorites. It's tough to argue with this guy right here.
Nope. Yeah.
Love that.
Again, yeah, killer record.
And then gotta love Purple Rain. I love this record. People always rag on the movie and say it's crappy too, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's awesome.
Dude, it's incredible.
Purple Rain is an amazing movie.
I'm gonna cleanse your soul in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
I mean, there's a lot of bad movies with soundtracks, but that's
not one.
That's not one of them. Not one of them at all.
That's as a matter of fact. That's the record that in my childhood was the first thing that got me to look away from rock and roll, like hard rock and roll, for a minute and really get immersed in Prince. I think, it was everything. It was because I started listening to Morris Day and the Time because of that. Who was it? Was it Apollonia or Vanity? I forget. There were a bunch of careers that got sparked out of that whole Prince movement because of Purple Rain. Morris Day and the Time. That whole movie was great. That scene was awesome. They threw that girl in the dumpster. That's insane.
So we're getting ready to wind things down here. But I want to say, first of all, it's been really nice having you in the studio, man. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
And we like to get a little nostalgia going on the Beat Sessions. So we celebrate anniversaries. Actually, it's the big one. I love this record. Lenny Kravitz, Mama Said, 30th anniversary.
It's been 30 years.
It's been 30 years. He still looks the same, though.
Yeah.
He
actually looks better.
Right? He's a good-looking dude, man.
Yeah.
Very talented as well.
Yeah.
Like, I Always on the Run, probably my favorite song on that record. I love that funky bass line.
Everything he did was just gold, and it was at a time where like he's playing raw rock and roll, like that's just straight up rock and roll, and that wasn't what was happening back then. But he got everybody's attention, man.
Yeah,
Lenny Kravitz is a serious cat.
I mean, 91, like that was like right in the heyday of the grunge movement.
Yeah,
he's doing his thing.
Yeah. That was the pinnacle of it.
Yeah, I think that's his second record too, or I mean that's like right at the beginning of his career, pretty much. So I mean, if it's like either his second or third record. I know it's not his debut, but phenomenal record. Great celebrating that. Well, camera's on you while we're closing things out. Do you have anything you want to tell the audience about? We talked about future shows. Maybe you just want to run down some of those dates real quick again for everybody.
You can catch Cranberry Suit at Chopper John's on Sunday, May 30th in Phoenix on Indian School. You can also catch us June 26th at the Territorial Bar in Tucson, Arizona. Support local music, support local musicians, and be well.
Mike Lars, everybody. It's been a pleasure. You've been in the Beat Sessions. We will see you next Sunday, where I will have Mr. Andy Dominguez, hopefully, in the studio with me. He's getting ready to be a father and moving in the process of all sorts of nonsense. So hopefully he can make it in the studio. If not, I'll have something special conjured up for y'all. Take care. Have a good night.